I was gonna go on, but I had kidney pain, so we postponed it to today. So today's guest is awesome. It's gonna be episodes to be about addiction and finding purpose after the fact and beating addiction. Today's guest is very knowledgeable about this topic. Uh, and I'm proud to have her on. We were linked up before I came back down here to Tennessee to have her on, but I'm glad we were able to reschedule, seeing that the move postponed Majestic AF season 2. So, no further ado, let me bring on my friend, my dear friend Emily Kief. What's up? How you been?
Hey,
I'm so
I'm
proud to have
good.
you. I'm so
I
proud to have
know.
you and have you
It's
tell
been
your
a
story.
long time.
Yeah, I know, dude. We tried. It was like the universe didn't want us to link up, but now we have. So
Yep.
let's jump right into this. You are, I don't want to say an expert, but you have background in addiction and stuff like that. So with being a veteran, I know it affects a lot of veterans as they come home. They get addicted to drugs, such as I did myself. um,
All the time.
extremely addicted. You know what I mean? Like, cause first off, they're chasing that bullet, they're chasing that round, that high they got, and it's a loss of a purpose. And I know from my feeling is like I used addiction, like alcohol and stuff like that, like to fill a void that couldn't be filled. You know what I mean? So
Oh
like
yeah, 100%.
it's a struggling thing, and there's never really anything that's gonna fill that void.
Right.
So So with your, you got something recently, a certificate for Troy, New York, which is like a huge deal.
Right. Yeah. So I work with a nonprofit organization called Equality for Troy. Check us out on Facebook. We do a lot of work in Troy, New York. We do basic community services like, combating homelessness. We have a free store where we have clothes and hygiene things. And now with COVID and everything, that's a big deal, making sure that everyone has masks and hand sanitizer and soap and stuff like that. We have a food stability program, which basically means we cook 2 meals a day during the week and feed the homeless. We also have a couple local urban farms that we work with that give us donations of fruits and veggies and things like that. We have barbecues and parties throughout the summer. Just helping the underprivileged populations of the city that we live in, the people that you know everyone else just drives by and doesn't give the time of day.
Yes,
Meanwhile, every single person I've talked to has an amazing story to tell. Like, you just sit there and you listen, and that's all they want. And they're people like you and me. You know what I
exactly.
mean? Like,
And now I feel like nothing's the status quo unless you are videotaping you doing something good, instead of just doing something good without no one else having to know that you did that thing. Like you see all these like
right.
YouTube stars filming themselves giving like $100 to a homeless person. But like that's just to get people to be like, oh, he's a nice person. But like you can just help people without the
Plus,
recognition. You know?
most of that shit is staged. I mean,
Exactly.
honestly, like, a
Exactly.
lot of those people are actors and not really, anyone that is in need of help. And
No.
and it's pathetic, just people chasing this internet clout.
Yeah.
We take pictures at our events, like especially last year with the US Census. We wanted to make sure that our people were counted. Just because they don't
Yeah.
have a physical address, doesn't mean that they can't be counted in the census. So we worked with the Rensselaer County Census Bureau, and we had 2 events. And we work really closely with other local businesses. Like, we have food trucks that'll come out and offer their food for free at some of our events. We have a pizza place around the corner from where we do a lot of their work. Every large pie we buy, they donate a pie.
That's
And
awesome.
it's a big, like, huge community. We work really closely with a local theater organization, the Troy Foundry Theater. You should also check them out on Facebook. They are amazing people. We work with them constantly to help, like I said, mostly homeless and underprivileged populations.
Because like I know from the veteran sense that down here there used to be a program called Volunteers of America. They used to help homeless veterans get their housing, and would even pay for the security of 3 months until they got on their feet. And then next thing you
Mhm.
know, like the mayor of Athens said they worked themselves out of a job, which is very false. There was a lot more homeless veterans, and like cut their programming, cut their funding. So
Jesus
they
Christ.
both Robert and Susan were both on the streets like looking for new jobs because that was their job to help veterans. They were veterans themselves, and it was just like a shitty thing. Is because probably the census, like you said, didn't count as many people as they should have, and like made them believe that like they did their job and there was no more homeless people in Athens, Tennessee, at least veterans, so they couldn't do their job any further. So like it sucked to see them that happen to them. Like they were an amazing group of people that helped me out in a situation, like to see that they could help more people out, but because of other people's ignorance, they were kicked to the curb. Is a horrible thing because there is a lot of homelessness out here, and there's a lot of people that need the help, but people that don't want to
And I
see it
mean,
or
yeah, they don't want to see it. They want to pretend it doesn't exist. They want to pretend it doesn't affect them. That, everyone who's homeless is, just lazy and doesn't want to get a job or, you know, and meanwhile, first of all, we're in the middle of unprecedented times with a global
yes,
pandemic. People who have worked and had a roof over their head their entire lives are now living on the streets with their family. That's never happened before in our lifetime.
yeah,
And not only that, but like these aren't throwaway people, and the amount of homeless veterans is fucking mind-blowing. Like, out of all of the people that should be homeless, they should be on the top of
getting help.
who should be getting housing. And it's so sad. I can't even tell you where the closest VA is to me. I think there's a tiny little rundown clinic in downtown Troy, but it's like I wouldn't want to go get medical services there.
No, no,
You
no.
know what I mean? Like, and it's just, we unfortunately, especially in a city like Troy, where it's hit hard by poverty, it's hit by hard by a lot of gentrification. Like the city government really only cares about the downtown area, so the RPI and the Sage kids have a nice place to walk around, but the surrounding neighborhoods are completely forgotten.
Yeah,
And the city government isn't doing shit about it, so it's up to us, the community, to step in and do the work.
exactly, and that's just how I believe in anything. I believe in the veteran community. It's the veterans that have to help veterans like stop the 22 a day, the suicide statistic. I believe we have to help ourselves because obviously the government and the other outsources don't really give a fuck, and like the VA doesn't care. They're not gonna help anyone. They haven't helped anyone in a while. So it's up to us to be the voice of the people and definitely the veteran community to get the aid that the veterans need. And I do believe they should be the first on the list for housing. Like it's crazy to see these guys come home and then after dodging bullets or like paying the ultimate sacrifice, losing a limb, and then having to not have a home in their own country that they defended for, and
Right.
they're willing to die for it. Like that's crazy to me. Like it's absurd.
It's mind-blowing. Like, and the defense budget in this country is astronomical. Like, why can't we use some of that money to help these men and women when they come home?
Yeah, instead of
Like,
just
where, you know okay, thanks for your service, hope you like your PTSD, like, go find a job and housing, and like, welcome
shy.
back to America. Like,
Yeah,
what the fuck?
and the thing is, like a lot of these guys, like they join in at 18 or like a young
Right.
age, and so they don't have any like schooling background or job background besides a grocery store that they worked in high school, and then they don't have that work work resume that people want. Like people say they support veterans and they support the troops, but like I've applied at fucking places and like they'd pick somebody else over me because they had more job experience than I did because no one really wants to train a new employee when they can hire someone that has that training in that field. So
Right.
no matter veteran or not, it's saving them time and money to not
And
have
I
to have.
think it does help that the government does provide grants to employers that hire veterans, to cover a portion of the salary. But like it's few and far between how many companies are taking advantage of that. Like I had a company that I worked for about 4 years ago. They took advantage of that, and then they also took advantage of a program where the state of New York was giving them grants to hire felons, and that company really took advantage of that, and they hired a lot of veterans, and they hired a lot of people coming out of prison, and they were great fucking employees. They worked harder than any of these little assholes that haven't done shit with their life, that have lived with their mom and dad their whole fucking lives. Like, no, these guys who were sitting in jail, or these guys who were sitting overseas, like they sit at and they sit at the desk and they do their stupid ass job, and they do it really fucking well.
Yeah.
And like I wish that like that was more common knowledge, but of course it's not, and people don't take advantage, like you said, because they don't want to train. They don't want someone who has zero experience like coming in, and and meanwhile, like I said, they're some of the best workers that I personally ever worked with.
And that's the thing also, is like it's even hard down here. Like I've looked for new houses that either like rent, and like with my service dog, like it's hard. Like they say no pets by law. They're not supposed to deny anyone's service dog. Like, they still deny it. They'll be like, "Oh, we found someone like a week ago."
Oh yeah,
I've even checked these people, and they'll be like, "Oh, like I don't have a dog," and they'll talk to me about it, like a meeting date, and then that date I'll tell them, "By the way, I'm bringing my service dog." They're like, "Oh, we already found someone to get the house. Like someone's already renting it," even though they were supposed to meet up with me in an hour, like to show me the house. It's like, okay, like.
And that's the thing, like the statistics behind service animals and veterans is crazy. Like the amount that these animals help these people when they come back, like, they're able not just for like physical health, but for mental health as well.
Yeah.
And
my dog's my best friend. She listens to
right.
me
Exactly.
So, but so let's get into the addiction aspect of like what you do. Like I know me, I've battled with addiction a lot, and I can't really blame it all on military. It's more of like just past and present kind of things. But I was addicted to pills, cocaine, fucking alcohol, and stuff like that. I've taken a step forward to like better myself, but like I could still like feel myself wanting to partake in these things. And I didn't use like a 12-step program or anything like that. I try to do it on my own.
Right.
So,
I mean, so like my story, and like this is something I always say in the beginning, like, people think that like addicts are these automatically, like they're born broken people, like they're born into abusive homes, they're, born into, trauma and child abuse. And like that wasn't my experience. My family was really great, and my home life was really great. But when it came to going to school, that was a different story. Like, fuck, we went to school together. We went to school with some real fucking assholes.
Yeah.
And like,
we did.
Like it was just like a daily struggle to want to wake up and like go and just be terrorized for 7.5 hours a day. And like I hate to use the word bullying, because it sounds like it's kind of I feel like it dampens what my actual experience was. Like what I experienced was like abuse. I experienced physical and mental, and then eventually sexual abuse from my peers that I would have to see on a daily basis, because I had no fucking choice. I had to go to school, and I had, that's what I had to do. And I, at a very early age, as early as, fifth grade, like, in fifth grade, the DARE officers came in, and I remember they had this big, like, board, and it had like,
the drugs, right?
The drugs on it. Like they actually brought like heroin and cocaine into a fifth grade classroom. You know what I mean? Like it was fucking mind boggling. And, the whole point of the thing was like, don't do these are bad. But I'm sitting there listening to them talk about like the different substances, and I'm like, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. What it does to you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I started out like a lot of uh addicts do, you know, drinking
Mhm.
pills, smoking a lot of marijuana. Um and like that was my escape. That was, you know, I could smoke or I could drink before school, and I felt like I could deal with you know, being terrorized. And like while this is all happening, like I'm just filled with constant rage. And, you know, a lot of times when that happens, especially with young girls, they chalk it up to puberty. You know, like, oh, she, you know, she's going through puberty, like she's going to get her period soon. Like, no, I was suffering from like legitimate mental illness,
Yeah.
and it went undiagnosed forever. And I remember like, so I don't know where you guys went, but I'll never like this memory is burned into my brain for life. Like I can still see it like it happened yesterday. We, for our 8th grade class trip, we went to Niagara Falls, and there was this, and we were all split up into like groups of people, and I happened to be split into a group of people that had been terrorizing me for years. Now I'm stuck for 3 days across the state with these fucking people,
Yeah.
with no escape, with parents who are, you know, the chaperones who don't know left from right. Like they just care that we're in their sights, you know, that they didn't
Yeah.
like lose us on the bus or some shit. And I just remember we were, you know, it was like the second, it was midway through the second day of the trip, and like it had just been complete living hell. And there's this walkway at the very top of the falls where you can look down and see, you know, all of Niagara Falls. And I remember standing there and like walking up to the railing and like looking down and telling myself, I'm gonna jump. I'm going to do this, and then my pain is going to be over. And I'm not sure, I still to this day don't know what stopped me. But I remember that like feeling of just, yeah, this is gonna happen. Like I'm gonna jump and I'm gonna be over it. And at this point, like, you know, I'd gotten pretty heavy into the alcohol and the marijuana. I had started doing like a lot of like self-harm, like cutting. And it wasn't until then that, you know, my family took notice, and I started, you know, I started medication really early, and I started on a medication that really wasn't meant for adolescents. And that made things so much worse. And so I turned to the drugs even more because they made me feel better than the fucking Celexa that I was getting from my doctor.
Yeah, yeah. That's the thing is like I feel like even in the youth when kids come out and they say they have problems and it's just like give them whatever drugs like Ritalin and all this
Oh
other shit,
yeah.
like it doesn't really help. It just masks it or it enhances another problem. You
Right.
know,
And that's the thing. Like
every
we're
every
the
kid.
Ritalin generation. Like
Yeah,
everybody I know was on that shit. And
yeah.
it was like nobody, barely any of them need it. Like, yes, there are a lot of people that have
Mm.
ADHD and who legitimately need that medication. But at the same time, kids are kids, and especially boys, they're going to run around, they're going to scream, they're going to get dirty, they're going to, you know, punch and hit each other. Like, that's what kids do.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly what they do, and
it
that's
doesn't mean you need to like subdue them with
yeah,
drugs. Jesus
exactly.
Christ.
Like I would see kids like even in like when I started getting to high school, like eating Adderall and stuff, like me knowing like people would buy that shit. Like I had fucking teachers' pets selling me Adderall and stuff. Like they're like, yo, like this kid definitely doesn't need that shit. Like and he knows he doesn't
Right.
need that shit at this point and he's just selling me Adderall. And
I
like
didn't get into the Adderall till college.
oh
Like,
dude,
and
I wasn't really good at school anyway, so like the Adderall
right.
just was for fucking party favors. Like I wasn't paying attention to school anyway. I had like a really bad learning disability, so like I taught
Yeah.
myself most of my shit. So like it was just it was just crazy that I saw these like either a teacher's kid selling me drugs or like some teacher's pet that like you would never imagine like they'll be selling drugs.
Oh
It's
yeah.
But then I was the bad kid. Like I was living the
Oh
bad,
yeah, yeah. You
the
always get blamed for
troublemaker.
shit. Yeah.
But like I was like, dude, like there's if you knew half the people I knew, like what they were doing, like I would look like a fucking saint to you guys. Like
Yeah, but you're no snitch, so you gotta sit there and
yeah,
take it.
exactly. But that's it.
But
That's it.
yeah, so like after high school, well, during high school, I found my love of photography, and like that kind of like snapped me out of it a little bit. Um and like I really really started getting focused on like photography and art, and I bombed the fuck out of my ACTs. I took my ACTs. I was still drunk from the night before. Like, like I fucked them up. So I went to Dutchess Community College because that was my only fucking option. Like, no other school was gonna take me. I fucking bombed that shit. And I got really focused on that, and I was on my way. I was driving down route. It was 9G. I was driving down 9G. I was I was in like Hyde Park, and I was stopped behind a school bus on a rainy day. And I was driving this shitty little 2003 Hyundai Elantra. Like, you breathe wrong around this thing and it fucking dents. Like, it was a garbage vehicle. And this 17-year-old kid in this 1980s Ford Bronco just comes and hits me from behind, and I ended up getting like sandwiched in between the Ford Bronco and the school buses.
Oh,
And the airbags never went off. So I ended up with 3 broken ribs, and I didn't find this out until 14 years later, but I actually broke my back in that accident.
oh, shit.
And that kind of like started, because like I don't know if you've ever broken a rib before, but there's not a whole fucking lot you can do about it. You
No.
basically just sit there and chew Percocet and try not to breathe too heavy,
Yeah.
and you do that for 3 weeks, like, and that's what it was, and like I liked the way that it made me feel. Like, I was in pain, but I was disconnected from the pain, and I was very much like, just like, it felt like normal to me. Like, it felt like, oh, this is what the world is supposed to feel like. I'm not supposed to give a shit about all that stuff going on in my head. I'm just supposed to forget it and just like live my life. And
Yeah.
that's what opiates did for me. They cleared my brain, and they allowed me to just like focus. um so I mean, I recovered from that. I ended up moving out to Rochester, and I got into a really good school out there for photography. And like, there was a time, so there's this like synthetic opiate drug. It's since been considered a controlled substance, but when I was in college, you used to be able to order it on the internet, and it would be shipped to your house the next day.
What
Like, it was
what drug was this?
crazy. Tramadol.
Oh, Tramadol. Yeah.
Yeah, so like now, like, they don't fucking do that anymore, but it used to be at that time, like, in this was like 2007. Yeah, they would just ship it to my house, and I would just sit there and just like down these pills like all day every day. And like, but it was really expensive because it wasn't going through insurance. Like, it was
Yeah.
going through some shady fucking online pharmacy with some shady fucking, I don't even know if they're a real doctor kind of deal.
Yeah.
And they were shipping it to your house. And like, and I got really really hooked on that because it was really convenient. At the same time, I was experimenting with other stuff, like, hallucinogens. Like, I loved hallucinogens. Like, I had so much fun on those. Cocaine was always a good time when you could get good shit.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, I always went back to some form of opiate, because that was where I felt normal, like I
Yeah.
said.
Well,
And
there's a quote in the things they lost in the fire with Halle Berry that Lucio the Taurus says. She asked him how heroin feels, or like the opiate feels. He says it's a kiss from God, and like
mhm,
that's why people get addicted to it. It's like
it's true.
first thing is
It's
a kiss
it's
from God,
Yeah.
and like it makes you feel like out of euphoria makes you feel like out of this world. Like, and
Yeah.
it's true. Like the opiate, like nothing can touch like an opiate high. You know what I mean?
It's
Like,
true. Oh my God. And, so eventually, like, I was taking all this tramadol and like, even though it was um advertised as not being like, an opiate, like it was a synthetic opiate, like fentanyl is
yeah,
a synthetic opiate. It's not derived from the poppy plant, but it's made in a lab with the same formula.
yeah.
So eventually I found out, holy shit, heroin is so much fucking cheaper. And that's how I started doing heroin, because like I was on these pills and they made
It's
me feel
cheaper than the
great. And
pill.
and then like I started running out of money and I was like, shit, there's fucking heroin. It's fucking great.
Yeah, $20 for like a single, right? Like something like that.
I was getting it cheaper than that. Come on.
Oh shit! All right. But
Those
yeah,
are Poughkeepsie prices, but
yeah.
out in Rochester it was cheaper.
That's what
Um,
happens though. Like you find out that
yeah.
it's a lot cheaper than like buying a Roxy or like a 30 milligram. You know what I mean? Like
Oh yeah.
it's crazy how cheap it is.
So like eventually like the drugs just took over. Like I failed out of school. I stopped being able to pay rent. Like I was a mess. And I ended up moving back, to Red Hook. And like I went like to an outpatient treatment for a couple months, and I ended up meeting someone there who taught me how to use heroin intravenously, meaning shooting up. Like, because before that, I had just been snorting it. And, so we met in this treatment program. He taught me how to shoot up. Like, and I was going to the treatment program for a while afterwards, too. Like, and I was shooting up in the bathroom, like, at this fucking drug rehabilitation center, like,
That's
and then
wild.
like going to group, and like nodding the fuck out. And it's like, eventually I got like a whole bunch of dirty drug tests, like right in a row. And they're like, you got to go. And I was like, okay, that's fair. So like, and then it was just like, it was pure insanity. Like I was living out of my car. I was, robbing, like when they say that junkies rob little old ladies, like I legitimately robbed a little old lady out front of a CVS. Like, not even lying. And I didn't feel bad about it.
Well, that's what
Because
happens.
nothing mattered, because at
No,
that point,
you
like,
wanted to get your
you
high.
know, and that's the thing. I wasn't even getting high anymore. I was just getting straight.
Yeah,
I was getting to the point where I wasn't dope sick.
yeah,
And like, and that's the thing is, you try these drugs, especially, like heroin and cocaine and crack. You try these for the first time, and like you're always chasing that first time that you got like really fucked up, and you never get that back. But you continue to chase it, and you continue to chase it. And during this time, I found out I was pregnant. And like that, you can convince yourself of anything when you're in active addiction.
mhm,
So I had convinced myself that it just wasn't physically possible. Like there's no way I'm poisoning my body on a daily basis. There's no possible way that I am pregnant.
yeah,
And eventually, I got arrested when I was 7 months pregnant, shoplifting. And I got ordered to a inpatient rehab, and then a follow-up in a halfway house. And I knew I wasn't ready to get clean. Like, I don't know, like my life was a fucking living hell, but I was like, no, you really need to get high. And they put me on the methadone program. And like, that was just, because methadone's another synthetic opiate, but it's like, you didn't get high. You just kind of like needed to take a nap a lot.
yeah,
Like, that was my experience with it. And like, so, I have like, so now I'm in this halfway house. I have like a month and a half before I give birth. I know for a fucking fact that I'm not going to get clean, that like I'm going to end up leaving this halfway house and going back out to living in my car. And that's exactly what I did. But I knew that I couldn't drag a kid,
yeah.
with me through that. So I ended up going through this adoption agency in Clifton Park. And I found this great couple that live in Staten Island. I spent a lot of time with them while I was still pregnant. They, spent time with me in the hospital when I was in labor. And you know, it was the adoption plan was all like set up ahead of time. And I remember I gave birth at Columbia Memorial in Hudson. And like, I don't know if you've ever been in that hospital, but it's a fucking hellhole. But the maternity ward, like, I don't know. It's just like there's like this green lighting and like it flickers and you know everybody like all the staff there thought that I was just like this giant piece of shit because here I am about like in labor about to give birth to a baby that is addicted to methadone who I'm not even going to be taking care of. And I just remember like being in the middle of labor and like screaming out in pain and like watching these nurses walk by just like shake their head and like keep walking. And it was just like and it was then that like I realized like that, and I didn't realize it until like years after the fact, was that's the stigma surrounding addiction right there. You know, like here I was, you know, because I could have kept my son and I could have destroyed his fucking life.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I would have done too. You know, he has a great life now. I've finally gotten to the point where I can talk about it without crying. Because the first few years I would talk about it and just be like, but you know, he has a great life now. It was a really good idea because, you know, 2 months after he was born, I left the halfway house. And, you know, I went out again. And at this point, you know, they were starting to crack down on, you know, the pill mills, you know, these pain management doctors that were, you know, over prescribing.
Yeah.
And because they were getting kickbacks from the pharmaceutical companies like Purdue would pay doctors for every Oxycontin prescription they would write to a patient. So yeah, they're going to write a shit ton of those. But at that point, like, you know, people had started catching on. People had realized that, you know, drugs like Oxycontin were not as they were intended. Like they were not as they were advertised. You know, they were highly, highly, highly addictive because it was a largely concentrated amount of dose. You know, people were able to, it was intended to, you know, be, what's it called? Extended release, but people were, you know, crushing it up and, you know, so that whole debacle happened. So like at the time where, you know, it like the whole kind of like face was changing. And I got arrested a few more times. I overdosed a few times. Like I watched a lot of my friends die. And like, I kind of like the last time I got arrested, it was in Keene, New Hampshire. I'm actually not allowed there for the rest of my life. There's an entire town in New Hampshire that I cannot go to. Kind of hold that as badge of honor for me. But I don't know, like the last time like I got arrested, they're like, okay, you know, fucking go to treatment again, I guess. Like, you know, you're clearly, you know, a piece of shit junkie, so I don't even know why we should even send you to treatment again, but here you go. And when I was there, like they put me on Suboxone, which is buprenorphine, and which is another synthetic opiate, but it like acts different, and naloxone, which blocks the opiate receptor from drugs that are poppy derived. So like, you know, like the heroin and the Roxys and things like that. And that drug saved my life because I was so like, at this point I had nothing. I had no car, no job, no housing, no nothing. Like, and you want me to spend 28 days in a rehab facility and then just discharge me and go figure it out? Yeah, that's setting people up for failure. Like, and that's why there's so many relapses, is because like the tools are not provided. But Suboxone, you know, I got hooked up with a fantastic doctor in Kingston. You know, him and his entire nursing staff were fucking phenomenal. Like, really like gave a shit about me and wanted to make sure that I was, you know, that I was going to stay clean. And this was 10 years ago. And I haven't stuck a needle in my arm in 10 years.
Congrats.
And thank you. Like I just hit 10 years this month actually. And it feels like so fucking good. And, you know, like you were saying about the 12 steps, like that was a big part of a lot of the recovery programs that I went into, is like, oh, you have to go to AA meetings, you have to go to NA meetings. And like, I never, and they were so like, oh, you have to find a higher power, but it doesn't have to be God, but it's like, yeah, the fuck it does. Like,
Yeah.
there's no way to read into the steps and all
We're
of the
not finding,
literature without
yeah,
believing in
the
some
prayer of
type of
serenity.
God.
The
And
prayer of
I
serenity.
couldn't fucking do it. Yeah.
Like they
I
use the
couldn't
prayer of serenity.
find some like power that I could like, because you're basically supposed to like submit your entire self, like, like, here's my higher power, fucking fix me, and I'm gonna trust in you to make it work. And it's like, no, I'm not gonna fucking do that.
Yeah.
So I am now what a lot of people like to call is California sober. So I drink, not like heavily. If I'm hanging out with friends, get a little tipsy once in a while. I do cocaine once in a while, like do hallucinogens once in a while, and it's all like this once in a while, but it's like, I haven't touched an opiate in 10 years.
Yeah.
And, as far as like me breaking my back, like the amount of treatments that are out there now that have nothing to do with opiates is fantastic.
Yeah.
Like I get these steroid injections a couple times a year, these like giant fucking needles that just like jabbed in my back, and it feels great. I get relief for like 6 to 8 months, and there's no fucking opiates in it. Any of the painkillers that I take like are anti-inflammatories. Like there's really very few situations with chronic pain that need to be treated with these addictive substances. And especially like with fentanyl, like fentanyl was designed for like end of life cancer patients.
Yes.
Like that's what fentanyl is designed for. And it's not what it's being used for.
Not at all. Not at all.
And unfortunately, like fentanyl is actually really, really cheap to make, like on the and sell on the black market, and it's being put in everything. Yeah. Like not just the heroin and like it's being put in cocaine, it's being put in crack, it's being put in party drugs. Like a couple months ago, there were 4 young people that overdosed. They were taking like Molly or ecstasy, like one of those drugs that I don't know, I'm too old for. And then 4 of them overdosed because there was fucking fentanyl in it.
Yeah, that's what I'm pretty sure Mac Miller died thinking he was doing cocaine and it was cut with fat. Like,
yeah, that was fucking. I mean, he definitely struggled with addiction. And he, it needs to start being treated. So we're fine. Like, so you're never gonna tell like a cancer patient or someone who broke a bone, like just stop, just get over it. Yeah. And I've actually noticed in my lifetime a breaking of the stigma regarding like mental health, like depression and anxiety. I feel like people are a lot more open about it now than they used to be. And we need to add addiction to that, because addiction is a mental health issue, period. And it's scientifically proven. Like there's this great documentary on Nova that talks about, the actual chemical imbalances in someone's brain that leads to addiction. Like that there's science behind it. It's not a moral failing. It's not, because someone is a scumbag. Like it's a legitimate medical condition. Yeah. And until we can realize that, we're going to be living in this world of a stigma where, like, oh, why are we bothering with overdose prevention? We should just let junkies die. And, like people take drugs because they want to, because, they're lazy. And it's like, there's no science in that. Like that's just your shitty opinion on a situation that you don't understand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just like, I can't believe it.
That's like when people like say it's not a disease, like it's a choice and stuff like that. Like, the science says it's a fucking disease. Like,
right, exactly.
Unless you're smarter than a scientist, like
But
Uh,
I mean, I try to do my part to break the stigma, every day. Like I tell my story, publicly. I don't I used to not. And I used to like participate in that stigma against myself. Like I
yeah,
used to, not tell anybody that, oh, I used to be a heroin addict and, I used to rob old ladies and go to jail and, like all this shit. And I never used to talk about having a kid and, having him adopted. Like very few people in my life know about that. And it's like I got to the point a few years ago where I was like, I'm not helping anybody by staying quiet. I'm letting people suffer, by not sharing my story, because there are people out there that,
they can
have
relate.
similar stories and that can relate and that can see that, shit, it's possible. Like, I'm one of those people, like if I can do it, you can do it, but you need to be provided the right tools to do it.
Yeah,
And that's the thing. Like, it's not just like oh, I'm not a heroin addict anymore. Like you need to be helped, and you need to be helped by medical professionals, and you need to be helped by a community that's supportive. And like until we break that stigma, that's not going to happen. I mean, there was legislation put forth just today or yesterday, actually, out of Washington. So basically, to be prescribed Suboxone, you as a medical provider have to go through like special training, and like you have to get a special certification, and you have to jump through fucking 14 million hoops through like the Department of Health to be able to prescribe this drug that is shown to save lives. And legislation was just put forward to get rid of a lot of those hoops. So
yeah,
that means, more doctors and more, and they even opened it up to like physician's assistants and like registered nurses. Like they can now prescribe it, because like the waiting list to get to see some of these doctors is long.
yeah,
And, these people that are on these waiting lists, like they didn't just stop doing drugs because they're on a waiting list. Like they're still out there doing drugs. What if they
yeah,
decide that they're not ready to get clean when their time is up? What if they fucking die? Like
yeah.
nobody should die having to wait for medical care.
Yes, that's 100% correct.
And so I'm hoping with this legislation that this is going to, curb some of that waiting time for people that want to get on like some form of medication assisted treatment, because it's scientifically proven. There's no real science behind the 12 steps. The thing about the 12 steps is the community it's in. So you go to these meetings and you're surrounded by people who are dealing with the same struggles that you're dealing with, who are, they have the same goal in mind. And that's where I think the rooms of AA and NA are the most effective, is you're surrounding yourself by
Like-minded
people.
people.
Exactly. And that's what helped me in the rooms. Like, yeah, I couldn't buy into, the 12 steps, and I couldn't buy into the higher power bullshit, and I couldn't, necessarily relate to these 70-year-old men who, had like spent the 60s and 70s, like, in Mad Men style kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah,
couldn't relate to them, but I could relate to other people that were there. And like, those are the people that I spend time with. And, we did things like, you know, like boring shit, like hiking and like, going to Barnes and Noble. But like, it was big for me because I was doing these things that I had never fucking done before. Busy, like being a drug addict.
yeah,
So it just like, I love that part of the community of, the rooms, like as they call them. But like the 12-step programs is just like, surrounding yourself with like-minded people who are healthy, for the most part, healthy to be around.
yeah.
Um,
But I've also heard a lot about like people going to rehabs and like finding new connects, and like that there's more drugs in rehab facilities than there is out in the streets, and they're easier to get. And like that's what I think is crazy. It's like you're sending these people to these rehab facilities that like either
I mean, it
doctors don't do it.
depends on the facility. Like I was at one where the rehab itself was in this old tuberculosis hospital, and it, like, you know, I'm not sure how much of this shit was up to code, but like there were these, you know, screens over the windows, and like at night, like people would you know, tell people to come onto the property, and like they would, you know, like send like, you know, a kite in prison, like they would send you know, a little piece of string down 3 flights, and like, you know, they'd get the drugs and like pull it back up, and you know, like that was the only time that I really saw it, was at that one facility. Other than that, you know, it happens a lot in prisons and jail and county jails. There's no recovery there. You
Yeah.
know, if these men and women are lucky, they might get a 12-step meeting once a month, once a week. Other than that, like, you know, it's riddled with drugs. You know, there's no treatment, there's no rehabilitation. There, you know, the whole system needs to be overhauled with that.
Yeah.
And especially like in New York, you know, legalize marijuana, and it's actually, again, scientifically proven that cannabis can drastically help people who are suffering from addiction to harder
Yeah.
drugs.
Yeah. And
You know,
that's like I don't smoke weed, but like I'm a huge supporter of it.
that's me. Like I can't smoke it because I'll be like anxious in the corner, and then I'll
Yeah.
eat like 30 cheeseburgers and pass
Yeah.
out. And it's like, yeah, I'm gonna save my money, thanks.
Yeah. Exactly.
But yeah, I'm a huge supporter of it, and like I said, it's scientifically proven. And you know, for years we've heard this idea of gateway drugs, right? So like marijuana is a gateway drug, you know, alcohol is a gateway drug, nicotine is a gateway drug. No, you know what's a fucking gateway drug? Is fucking childhood trauma.
Hmm.
That is a gateway drug, and that is what, you know, so many people, you know, have to experience to eventually, like, you know, find themselves in the grips of addiction.
Yeah.
Like I don't believe in gateway drugs, because I know people who have drank and smoked pot their entire lives, never touched anything else. You
That is
know,
true.
and I know people who have tried heroin or pills once and said, nah, not for me. You know, did a line of coke, nah, not for me. You know, and and again, it goes to show you that it's not like, not a moral failing. It's those people don't have the same brain chemistry that I do.
Yeah.
You know, so
And like
so
that.
they're able to do it and walk away. Meanwhile, if you were to give me a Percocet right now, it'd be off to the races.
Yeah. Exactly. And like that's the thing is like I've seen people like you said like just do a drug for a day and then they're like I'm cool with it, or like
Yeah,
people do opiates and not never get sick, like never have like a dope
yeah,
sickness, even though they're doing it every day. Like it's fucking absurd. Like I've seen like, and it just shows that like everyone's body's fucking different. And like I feel like that people that outcast drug addicts and like blame blame on most of them are like people that don't want to believe that it's a real thing. Like I know Red Hook alone like don't doesn't want to make it seem like there's a drug addiction there, but there is, and like it's
hmm,
because these parents don't want to believe their kids are doing it. Like their parents
right,
shocked that when like, a good kid fucking ODs and like, oh, not in our little town. That kid must have been a piece of shit, hanging out with pieces of shit. It's like, and it's like, no, dude, like it happens. Like,
right. And it's like, you know, they don't say the same shit about the kids that, you know, like are getting caught drinking and driving, or you know, killing their friends in drunk driving accidents. Like, you know, like, you know, they were just like, there's this whole different outlook on alcohol, and I think it's just because it's legal, like, and it's more socially acceptable than, you know, some of the other things. You know, but that's changing, especially with, you know, and it's so funny, like a lot of the people that I hang out with, like, you know, they still, like, when they smoke weed out in public, they're still like, you know, going behind a tree, and I was like, no, dude, light up right there, like,
yeah,
it's fucking legal. So it's
like,
definitely like, you know, a learning curve with, you know, with that. But I would love to see that, you know, really kick off in the recovery community, as far as, you know, like cannabis, and especially like CBD, you know, because that can really help people. And It's not addictive like Xanax is. That's unfortunately a vice that I haven't been able to like really stop. Like I've been on Xanax for like 15 years,
Dude,
and
my thing with Xanax, I never want to be a zombie. So like, I was always against it, even when like the VA tried to strap
yeah,
stuff like that. Like I was always against fucking Xannies because like I did it when I was partying and stuff, and like it always made me feel like a fucking zombie, or like I would lose a day because I would sleep all day, and like I'd never want that.
yeah. Well, I mean, like that's the thing. Like with me, like I take it as prescribed, so
Yeah,
it's
so
so
it's
I don't
not
turn
intense.
into a zombie. I don't party with it, like, because if I tried to do that, it would be like 8:30 and I'd be like, all right, I'm going to bed. Like, you know what I mean? And I just like, I wish, I'm hoping with, because I react so badly to marijuana, I'm hoping that, now with the legalization in New York, like that'll have like we'll have more access to like dispensaries and like medical professionals that, maybe can find me a strain that
Yeah,
isn't going to do that to me, that, can help with my anxiety. And then I can, wean myself off the Xanax, because like, that would be a great thing for me, because I still deal with anxiety on a daily basis. And, but it's a necessary evil at this point, as far as that's concerned. I've
yes,
done, you know years of therapy, every fucking mental health drug under the sun, and this is unfortunately what works for me.
yeah.
And I'd really like to come off of it, but it can't be where it's not replaced with something else. So I'm hoping that soon we'll get there.
See, like,
I'm hoping.
because I've been a big supporter of marijuana. Like, I wish the VA was able to subscribe places, definitely in states that are legal, to veterans. Like, I know Weed for Warriors is a big organization. My buddy
Mhm.
got me hooked on them, and that's what they do is like they help veterans find marijuana instead of doing the big pharma and going doing painkillers and Xanax and stuff like that. So, like, to see veterans knowing that this is something that can help them, like definitely with the marijuana, and like trying to push for the regulations to come so that they can use it and get prescribed it by the VA, which the VA is never going to change. It's all this time, and I doubt it's going to ever be able to integrate marijuana to it. But it's my fingers are crossed that they will. You know what I mean? Like that they
Yeah.
see it, the beneficial facts of marijuana. And when it comes to gateway drug, I'm pretty sure like I started drinking and then like doing other drugs. Like I was never high smoking weed. And I was like, you know what? I want to do some cocaine or like
Right.
opiates, stoned as fuck. When I was drunk, I was like, yo, let me get some cocaine or some Molly. Like I never
Right.
was ever stoned and was like, oh, let me go fucking get high on some other drug real quick. Like
Yeah, it's like,
my,
no, let's take a
my,
trip to Taco Bell. Fuck.
yeah, exactly. So I don't get why it was ever labeled a gateway drug. I think
I don't know.
that had like reefer madness and shit. Like the
I
old
think it came from the whole like Reagan era, like war on drugs, like just say no kind of thing, which is still like to this day, like that's still a slogan people use. Oh, just say no, just don't use drugs,
yeah
and it's like, are you that like stupid? Like I don't know. I have very little patience for people who are so quick to stigmatize, people that are suffering from addiction, because like I said, people suffer from all sorts of, other ailments, and they're not, people with, type 2 diabetes, like,
yeah
a lot of those people, like, live unhealthy lifestyles, but they're not being shamed for having diabetes.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And I know that's not always the case. Like you can, get it later in life, even if you are the healthiest person on earth. But it's the same thing. Like, those people aren't being shamed, but the addicts are. The people with mental health issues are. And I'm hoping, like, so like you and I were talking about this, I think yesterday. So like all these different states were filing class action lawsuits against pharmaceutical companies, and New York was just awarded $32 million. from one of the lawsuits. And there's more pending because they filed them against various companies. But for right now, New York was given $32 million, and 20 million of that is going into what's called a general fund. So it's not going to the people whose lives have been ruined by these false allegations made about the quote unquote safety of these drugs. So
Yeah.
like I really want to see like if that money is if there's $20 million sitting in whatever the fuck a general fund is, like let's see some systematic changes. Let's
Yeah.
see more treatment centers open. Let's see more education that actually works. Let's see harm reduction. Shit, let's see money go into the pockets of nonprofits like mine that are on the ground. Like that's one thing that we preach over and over. We are boots on the ground. Like we are in our community. We are not in an office. Like last year, I think we did the math. Like we spent a total of like $80,000 like on our work, and that all came out of our own pockets. Like like for a while, like we were kind of just passing around the same $50 from Venmo to Cash App to Venmo, like, oh shit, I got this bill to pay, let me wait till Friday when I get paid and then I can buy this. And it was like that's how we did it all through 2020. Luckily things are looking up for us for this year. We're qualified for some grants. We have quite a few sponsors now. The OOPP certification we just got through the Department of Health is going to be huge.
It opens a lot of doors. It opens a lot of doors.
Yeah, it's gonna because it's gonna set us apart from a lot of other organizations that like want to talk about doing the work but don't have what is, because unfortunately there's red tape. There's red tape surrounding everything, and this is gonna allow us to cut through that and to say, yes, I can be here distributing this Narcan because I have this pretty piece of paper from the state that says I can.
Yeah.
And it's like and that's another thing that goes hand in hand with recovery, and it's something that people don't want to fucking hear, is harm reduction, right? So harm reduction is basically preventing overdoses and preventing contagious diseases that are spread, like hepatitis and HIV and things like that are spread through the use of like sharing needles and things like that. Like people don't want to hear that that's part of the solution. Well, harm reduction is part of the solution, because not everybody that you're gonna meet is gonna be ready to get clean. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that they should be dying in the alley or subjecting themselves to infectious diseases because they don't have clean needles. Like, because again, at the end of the day, they're people. And a lot of those people that we started doing harm reduction with last year, I forget the exact number, it's between 10 and 12 people that we got off the street and into treatment, who a week or two prior were not ready to do that. They're like, can you just show me how to use Narcan? Can I get some clean needles? Like that kind of thing. And like 2 weeks later, they're like, can you get me into rehab, kind of thing? So like harm reduction is part of recovery and it's part of the solution. And like, two of like the hugest tools like in my toolbox that I use are, first off, of course, like the Narcan. Like I carry this on my person. I have it in every single backpack that I have. I also have a giant tub of it in the back of my car. This is a lifesaver. And so it's different now than it used to be. It used to be an intramuscular injection. And, people were, because that would mean you would have to carry around a vial, carry around a needle, like measure it out. Like now it's literally just like this little, like, plunger that you like shove up someone's nose and then, you wait. And, the other thing that like is huge, I don't know if you can see it. So these are these are fentanyl test strips. So it says like on the back, like it makes me feel really fancy because it says for forensic use only, but it's a test strip, and you can test any substance with this, any drug you can test with this, and it will tell you if there is fentanyl in it.
Okay.
And so we're really encouraging people to not only carry Narcan everywhere they go, even if you're going to the grocery store, because I have a friend who died out front of a Save a Lot because nobody in the area had Narcan. They were sitting there giving CPR, and unfortunately she died. So carry Narcan everywhere. Even if you don't use drugs, carry Narcan with you, because you don't know when it's going to be in handy. And test your shit.
Yeah.
Or if you know people, like I had a friend come to my house a couple days ago. He's like, listen, friend of mine's coming into town, and they're going to want to do coke one night, and I just, can I get a few test strips off you? I was like, yeah, fuck yeah. Like, and this is someone who doesn't do it often, but knows that shit's being tainted, and shit's
Yeah.
being, like, it's just test your shit.
Exactly.
And there's the, like I said, like those are the two biggest tools like in my arsenal that I have, that I use on a daily basis when I'm doing harm reduction work. And just keeping a pile, a stack of boxes and boxes of clean needles, and giving out sharps containers. That's another thing, because a lot of times, unfortunately, like used needles are not disposed of properly, and there's not enough public sharps containers that people want to use. Like, yeah, there's one at the police station, but you
Who's gonna
think
use
drug addicts want to go to the police station? Like, here's my used needles. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
it?
no, they're not going to use it. Like,
Not
so
at
we're
all.
able to give them these plastic sharps containers, and then what they can actually do is it locks, and then there's an address on it and prepaid postage, and then if they literally just throw it in any mailbox, it'll get sent and disposed of properly.
That is awesome. So we have to
So
we have to wrap this
yeah,
up quick. But
yeah.
do you have any final thing you want to tell these people that are going through addiction, or like, or any non for profits they can turn to for help to get clean?
I mean, obviously, if you're in, the city of Troy, or actually in New York in general, so there's a great organization. They're called Vocal New York. And there's also Project Safe Point, which is through Catholic Charities. They are great. They, not only provide harm reduction tools, but they do a lot of training. And they're the ones actually that do the needle exchange, where you can drop it in the mailbox. Like I said, look us up on Facebook, Quality for Troy. Now that the summer's kicking off, we're going to be doing a whole lot of, fun events in the city. Um, and for people that are still suffering, like, you're not alone. And active addiction is such an isolating experience. And you are so disconnected from everybody, but it doesn't have to be that way. And find safe people to reach out to. Like, my name is on this. Like, send me a message on Facebook. Like, I have no problems talking to people, helping people through shit. Like, even if you say, hey, I need a fentanyl test strip, like, yeah, hit me up, I got you. Or, hey, can you show me how to use Narcan? Yeah, I got you. Like, or can they help me get into rehab? Yeah, I got you. Like, just reach out to safe people, reach out to safe organizations. Don't feel like you're forced to do it alone, because you're not.
Not at all. And that's the big thing is I preach here is I made Majestic AF to show people they aren't alone going through mental health issues and anything, because they're not. I remember feeling the loneliest I ever felt. So I want to thank my guest, Emily. Thank you. I'm so happy that we finally got to do this. Your story is
Yes, me
amazing.
too.
I love you, and I hope to have you on in the future for more uptailing big things that you guys are doing with your program. I like to end it with a quote that I heard today from a friend. Never speak negatively about yourself. The warrior inside hears that these words, and they are lesser for it. So think positive all the time. Fucking keep your heads up and stay majestic as fuck. Thank you guys for tuning in. I love you all.
All right. Love you, Shawnee.
Love you.